Rain poured down relentlessly over the worn-out streets of the inner city. The wind howled like a wounded animal, tugging at everything not nailed to the ground. Garbage cans rolled, streetlights flickered, and a thick mist wrapped around the city like a sorrowful shroud under an overpass. Nestled between graffiti-covered concrete columns and old cardboard sheets, sat Marcus Kane, a 57-year-old homeless black man with weary eyes, a heavy heart, and shoes that barely had soles. He wrapped his threadbare coat tighter around himself as he shivered in the cold. His entire world fit inside an old shopping cart, a pair of worn blankets, a few books he collected from trash bins, and a cracked radio that hadn't worked in years. Marcus wasn't always like this. He once had a job, a family, a small apartment on the west side. But fate had dealt him a cruel hand. A car accident took his wife and child, and the medical bills left him penniless. Grief turned to depression, and depression turned to homelessness. Now, the streets were the only home he knew. He didn't ask for much, just peace. But this night would change everything. As Marcus tried to sleep on the damp cardboard, he heard a faint whimpering sound. At first he thought it was just the wind. But then it came again, soft, trembling, desperate. He stood up slowly, his back aching with every movement, and followed the sound behind a stack of old pallets. There, lying motionless in the cold, puddle-filled alley, was a starving, mud-covered stray dog. Its ribs were sticking out, its fur clumped with dirt, and its those eyes looked almost human in their pain. Marcus crouched beside the animal. "Hey there, buddy," he whispered. "You cold too, huh?" The dog whimpered again, too weak to stand, without a second thought. Marcus took off his own coat, the only layer shielding him from the cold, and wrapped the shivering animal in it. He carried the dog gently back to his makeshift shelter, placed it on the blanket, and held it close to his chest, trying to warm it with his body heat. He hadn't eaten all day, but the only food he had, a crushed granola bar he'd saved. He offered to the dog. The animal sniffed it hesitantly, then devoured it with trembling jaws. That night, they slept side by side under the overpass, two broken souls finding comfort in each other's warmth. What Marcus didn't know was that this one act of compassion would ripple into the lives of people he'd never met, and attract the attention of someone watching him from the shadows. Morning crept in with a dull grey sky, and the scent of wet concrete. Marcus stirred, still curled up next to the trembling dog, now wrapped in his tattered coat. For the first time in months, he hadn't been alone during the night. The dog whom Marcus had started calling Lucky had nestled into his chest like a child. Lucky licked Marcus's face weakly as sunlight poked through the cracks above the overpass. "You made it, huh?" Marcus smiled softly, eyes red from both exhaustion and emotion. "Guess we both got a second chance." Marcus rummaged through nearby bins, collecting anything remotely edible, not just for himself now, but for Lucky. He found a half-eaten sandwich and a crushed bottle of water and carefully fed the dog. Lucky wagged his tail for the first time, a broken, wobbly little flutter. The bond was instant, real, almost divine. But elsewhere in the city, in a towering black SUV parked down the street, tinted windows hid a man in a black suit. He watched through binoculars. Beside him sat a tablet playing footage from a traffic cam of Marcus lifting Lucky the night before. "He's the one," the man whispered. "Are you sure?" A voice crackled through the car radio. "Absolutely. That's the subject. Send the report to the Foundation. They'll want to see this." Back under the overpass, Marcus had no idea he was being watched. All he cared about was keeping Lucky alive. For the next few days, he scoured dumpsters, begged politely at bakery doors, and skipped his own meager meals just to keep Lucky fed. He even bathed the dog with rainwater and used torn socks as makeshift. Paw wraps dot everywhere they went. Lucky drew attention. The dog's soulful eyes, the way he never left Marcus's side made people stop and smile. A few even gave Marcus extra food just for the dog. One evening, as they sat near a fast food joint's back alley, a teenage worker came out for a smoke break. She spotted Marcus feeding Lucky pieces of a stale bun. "Yo," she said, tossing him a bag. They were gonna throw this out anyway. Marcus looked inside. Fried chicken, fries, 2 sandwiches. "You sure?" he asked, hesitant. "Yeah," she shrugged. "I saw what you did for that dog. Most folks wouldn't." "Cool." Marcus nodded, gratitude burning in his chest. "Thank you, truly." Later that night, he whispered to Lucky, "You're not just lucky, kid. You're a blessing." But just 2 blocks away, another pair of eyes were watching, this time from a rooftop. A man with a zoom lens camera clicked photos quietly in the dark. Snap, Marcus sharing food. Snap. Marcus laughing as Lucky licked his face. Snap, the shadowy figure lowered his camera. "The story's real," he muttered into a recorder. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow." Marcus thought he was just surviving. But what he didn't know was that his life was now the center of something far bigger than he could imagine. The city moved on, but something had shifted. For Marcus, the days with Lucky were warmer than any summer sun. He had a reason to rise, to move, to fight. Each morning, he'd wake to a wet nose nudging his cheek. Each night, he'd fall asleep to the sound of Lucky's soft breathing, curled against him like a heartbeat he didn't know he needed. But signs of change began to stir. One chilly afternoon, Marcus sat by the park bench near a children's playground. Lucky, now visibly stronger, wagged his tail as children reached to pet him. Mothers smiled kindly. A coffee vendor even handed Marcus a free cup. "You and that Machu are good for each other," the man grinned. "Never seen a dog stick so close to someone like that." Marcus looked down, Lucky licking his hand affectionately. "He saved me more than I saved him." But as the sun dipped low, a paper blew past Marcus's feet. He didn't think much of it until it circled back with the breeze and landed near Lucky's paws. It wasn't just trash. It was an envelope, unmarked, sealed. Marcus bent down, brow furrowed. Where did this come from? He looked around. No one had dropped it. No one nearby seemed to be paying attention. He opened the envelope. Inside was a small white card with bold black letters. "You were never invisible. Someone saw you. Keep going. Watch the lamppost at midnight." Marcus's heart raced. He read the message 3 times. Was it a joke, a scam, a hallucination? No, it was real. The paper was crisp, the ink fresh. He glanced at Lucky. The dog tilted his head like he understood. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat quietly beneath the overpass, staring at the old lamppost across the street. Midnight crept closer. The world was still. And then, at exactly 12 a.m., the light flickered once, twice, and then went completely dark. Marcus stood. Lucky barked once. From the darkness beneath the flickering lamppost, a figure stepped forward, dressed in grey, hooded, carrying a bag. The figure walked slowly toward Marcus, then stopped a few feet away and set the bag down. They didn't speak, didn't remove their hood. They simply whispered, "You did the right thing," and then, just as quietly, disappeared into the night. Marcus approached the bag. Carefully, he opened it. Inside, a fresh set of warm clothes, 2 full meals in sealed containers. A note, "Keep doing good, you are being seen," and at the very bottom, a small envelope with 5 crisp $100 bills. Marcus dropped to his knees. What is this?" Lucky barked joyfully and wagged his tail. To him, this was just another adventure to Marcus. It was the beginning of something he couldn't explain. The next day, Marcus tried asking around about the figure. No one had seen anything. The lamppost light was back on like nothing had happened. He stared at the spot for hours, waiting, but the mystery remained. Then, 3 days later, it happened again. Another note, another envelope. This time, "Do not give up. The world needs people like you. You are part of something now." Marcus looked up at the sky. "Who are you?" he whispered. But the sky stayed silent, and Lucky curled at his feet. What Marcus didn't know was that every step he took now was part of a silent test. A story was being written by hands he'd never shaken, by hearts he'd never met, and the next chapter would change everything. The night had fallen over the city like a velvet curtain. Inside his small tent, Marcus lay curled up beside Shadow. The dog's breathing was shallow, her ribs still visible despite the food Marcus now shared. The bond between them had become unbreakable, a quiet companionship born from pain, survival, and a strange understanding. That evening, the sharp chill in the air was interrupted by a soft, almost hesitant rustling outside the tent. Marcus sat up, alert, his instincts honed by years of surviving on the streets. A shadow moved, not a threatening one, but deliberate. He pulled aside the flap. A small envelope, carefully sealed and placed in a plastic bag to shield it from the weather, rested on the ground. Marcus looked both ways. No one. He picked it up and stepped back inside. Shadow tilted her head curiously. Opening it slowly, he found a neatly folded handwritten note inside. The penmanship was elegant, almost too perfect for the messy world he knew. "Dear Marcus, you don't know me, but I've been watching you for weeks. Not out of pity, but out of deep admiration. You fed the dog when you had none for yourself. You showed the world what real humanity looks like. I was born with everything. You were given nothing. And yet, I see more grace in your silence than in the words of the powerful. If you're willing, I would like to meet you. No tricks, no pity, just a conversation. Tomorrow, noon. The fountain by 3rd and Elm." There was no name, no number. Just that. Marcus stared at the letter for a long time, his fingers trembling. Was it real? A joke? A test? The next morning, he couldn't eat. His heart thudded like a drum inside his chest. By 11:30 a.m., he was pacing the edges of the alley, Shadow trotting beside him, tail wagging gently. As the clock neared noon, Marcus made his way toward 3rd and Elm. The fountain stood in the middle of a quiet square. Its stone edges were worn, the water flowing with a peaceful rhythm. He stood, not knowing what to expect. Then she appeared, a woman in her late 30s, dressed modestly but with grace. She had a quiet, confident walk, like someone who was used to being in control but didn't flaunt it. "Marcus?" she asked gently. He nodded, unsure of what to say. "I'm Clara," she smiled. "I wrote you that note." Marcus blinked. "Why?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled out a folded newspaper, one from nearly a month ago. The headline read, "Wall Street heiress Clara Whitmore resigns from billion-dollar family business." "I left it all," she said softly. "The money, the noise, the corruption. I've been searching for something real, and I found you." Marcus was speechless. Clara knelt to pet Shadow. "You saved her, but you also saved me, Marcus." Before he could speak, she stood and handed him another envelope. This time it wasn't a letter, it was a key. To what? He asked. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "A second chance." The cold breeze whispered against the makeshift tarpaulin that served as Moloch's roof. He had just settled in for the night, the dog curled tightly beside him like a shadow that refused to leave. The moonlight cast soft silver glows over the street, and all seemed still until the silence was broken. Crunch. The sound of gravel shifting under deliberate feet. Malik stirred, eyes alert. Years of surviving on the streets had trained him to differentiate between drunken stumbles and purposeful movement. A figure emerged from the darkness. Not one, but two. And then 2 sleek black Mercedes purred to a halt beside the encampment. Their engines turned off, and the street plunged into a new kind of silence, heavy with suspense. Out stepped a man and a woman, both dressed impeccably, in black. Their clothes screamed wealth, but their expressions showed something else, urgency. Malik blinked, uncertain if he was dreaming. "Mr. Malik?" the man asked. Nobody called him that, ever. "Yes." Malik replied cautiously, standing. Slowly. The dog, sensing something strange, growled low. "We're looking for you. We've come to ask for your help," the woman said softly, almost pleading. "Me?" Malik scoffed. "What could a beggar like me possibly help the likes of you with?" The man stepped forward and pulled something from his coat pocket. A photograph. Malik's world tilted. It was a younger version of himself, with a woman and a child barely 3 years old. The air left his lungs. "We believe you're the man in this photo," the man said. "And the girl... she's missing. Your daughter... Malik's fingers trembled as he reached for the photograph. The edges were worn, creased by time, but the faces were unmistakable. His face, so much younger, full of life. Beside him, the woman he had once loved, and the little girl between them. His voice caught in his throat. I don't understand. Where did you get this?" The woman, her voice fragile but resolute, replied, "She came to us 2 months ago, searching for her father. Your name was the only clue she had. We run a shelter in the city outskirts. She said her mother died when she was a teenager. She's been alone ever since." The man added, "Then she vanished 3 weeks ago, without a word, no trace. The only thing she left behind was this photo, and your name." Malik's knees gave way, and he sat back down on the cold crate that served as his bed. His thoughts were spinning. He had been told the child was given up for adoption. He had begged to see her, but the authorities, the system, it had all failed him. He had spent years searching until he lost everything. His home, his job, his sanity, and now the daughter he never knew had found him, but disappeared again before they could meet. Where did she go? He asked, a tear slipping down his cheek. "That's why we're here," the man said. "We followed her last phone signals. Her last location pinged just 2 blocks from here. 3 weeks ago." The woman looked around, suddenly tense. "But something's wrong. We've asked around. People are scared to talk." Just then, the stray dog lifted its head and growled along. Low sound, From the shadows, a dark figure moved, watching, listening, and then vanished. Malik stood up. I don't know who you are, or why she came here. But if my daughter's in danger, I'm not going to sit here doing nothing. The man nodded. We were hoping you'd say that. Malik, we're going to need your help. Malik's eyes burned not with fear, but with purpose. Then let's find her. The night was darker than usual. A storm hovered on the edge of the city skyline, grumbling like an omen. Malik, the couple from the shelter, and the loyal stray dog, who now seemed to sense danger at every corner, moved through the narrow alleyways like shadows with purpose. Every step brought Malik closer to a truth he wasn't sure he was ready for. But he had to know. Where was his daughter? Why had she vanished so close to where he lived all these years? They reached the corner where her phone had last pinged. A run-down building stood tall, once a textile factory, now gutted and forgotten by the city. Shards of broken glass glinted in the moonlight like teeth. Graffiti screamed warnings in colors that bled like bruises. Keep out, she never left. They watch. The woman shuddered. She was here. I can feel it. The man pulled out a flashlight. Let's go. Inside, the air was thick like breathing in sorrow. The stray whimpered but pressed on, tail low and ears perked. Malik's heart thumped louder than his footsteps. Old metal stairs creaked. Rats scurried. Then a sound, faint, a whisper, a girl's voice. Help, they froze. Did you hear? That, the woman gasped. The man pointed the flashlight toward a far wall. A rusted door sat slightly ajar. Malik rushed forward, pushed it open, and found a room, a bed, a blanket, a cracked phone on the floor. Battery dead. Photos were tacked to the walls of him. Malik feeding the dog. Malik sitting by the fire. Malik asleep. Someone had been watching him, and she had been here. So close. And then another voice echoed behind them, calm, chilling. I told her to stay away from you. They turned. A tall man in a security uniform stepped into the light, face emotionless, eyes dead. She asked too many questions, he said. She wouldn't stop digging, and when she found out who you were, he shrugged. Malik's single quotes S fists clenched. Where is she? The man pulled out a key from his pocket and smirked. She's safe, for now. And then he bolted. The dog barked furiously. Malik chased after the guard, rage surging through his veins. This wasn't just about finding his daughter anymore. It was about unraveling a conspiracy that had buried itself beneath the city's filth, and Malik was done being a victim. He would get his daughter back, even if he had to bring the whole system down. The security guard sprinted into the darkness like a man possessed, but Malik was faster. Fueled by fury, grief, and something primal, he chased him through corridors of decay past collapsed beams, graffiti-covered walls, and puddles of stagnant water. The stray dog stayed close, barking like a war horn. They emerged into a hidden courtyard at the back of the building, where overgrown weeds crawled up rusting fences and the air reeked of mold. The guard reached a steel hatch half buried in the ground and started to pry it open with his key. Malik tackled him before he could unlock it. They crashed to the dirt. Fists flew. The guard fought like someone trained for violence, but Malik had nothing left to lose. He pounded the man's face, yelling, "Where is my daughter?" Blood ran from the guard's nose. He laughed bitterly. "You really don't get it, do you?" he rasped. "You think this is about you?" Malik grabbed him by the collar. "I'll ask one more time. The man spat blood. Open that hatch and see for yourself. The woman and man from the shelter caught up. The woman knelt beside Malik, her eyes wide. I know this place. They used to bring us food down there and take people who asked questions. Some never came back. The hatch opened with a grinding groan, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Malik handed the guard over to the couple, grabbed a flashlight, and descended. Step by step, the air grew colder. The smell of damp cement and something like blood, rust, thickened around him. He reached a corridor lined with old rooms. The walls were covered in peeling paint and children's drawings. Stick figures, stars, one with a red X over a girl's face. Then, from the end of the hallway, a sob, a real, human sob. Malik's heart stopped. He ran to the door and forced it open. There she was, dirty, bruised, thinner than he remembered, but unmistakably his daughter, Dad. He fell to his knees. Oh my God, baby girl, she burst into tears, crawling into his arms. He held her so tightly he thought he'd never let go again, but she whispered into his chest, her voice trembling, we have to get out. There's more, so many more. I wasn't the only one. Malik looked around the dim cell. He saw names scratched into the walls, photos, dozens of girls. Some had dates next to them, others had none. Malik stood up, fire in his eyes. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was a witness. A storm was coming in this time. It would not be silent. Malik emerged from the underground cell with his daughter cradled in his arms, his shirt soaked with her tears, his eyes locked with the man and woman who had helped him chase the truth. There was no need for words. They all knew this wasn't over. Police sirens screamed in the distance. The security guard, now bruised and bound, sat slumped against a pillar, his face pale, with the weight of what was about to unravel. But Malik didn't even look at him. His eyes were on the gathering crowd outside the shelter gates. Journalists, neighbors, people who had once walked past Malik's tent without a second glance. Now they looked at him like he was something else. Entirely not a beggar, but a hero. Within the hour, the shelter was swarming with authorities. The mayor himself arrived, trailed by cameras. The moment he saw Malik's daughter alive, he tried to spin it into a political victory. We've always supported justice, the mayor said. Let this moment remind us of the power of community. But Malik stepped forward, his voice low and deadly clear. You didn't support us. You ignored us. Until now. The cameras turned. The truth spilled out like a broken dam. The hidden underground cells, the missing girls, the trafficking network, the men in suits who funded the shelter not to help, but to hide. Within 24 hours, multiple arrests were made. The entire board of the non-profit shelter was detained. The chief of police, who had once turned Malik away, was suspended. And the media, they couldn't get enough. Homeless man turns hero, saves daughter from underground trafficking ring. Black veteran exposes citywide corruption. From a tent to the truth, the man who shook the system. But Malik didn't care for headlines. He sat with his daughter in the hospital, held her hand while doctors cleaned her wounds, whispered stories of better days, of her mother's laugh, of toy trains and summer rain. She slept with her fingers, curled around his dot when she awoke. She asked the one question he wasn't ready for. Dad, are we going back to the tent? He didn't answer right away, because that same afternoon, 2 sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside the hospital. It was the billionaire, the one whose dog Malik had saved. He stepped out, not with bodyguards, but with his wife and 2 young sons. They bowed their heads to Malik. They offered more than money, they offered respect, a new life and a home. But Malik said only this: I didn't do this for reward. I did it because no one else would. Still, when they offered him a home, a real home for him and his daughter, he said yes, not out of pride, but because she deserved it, and the stray dog he came to. Epilogue, Silent Vault. Months later, Malik started a foundation, not in his name, but in his daughter's. Its goal, to find the voices buried by poverty, by race, by silence. He called it Silent Vault, and through it, he made sure that no one else would have to scream into the darkness for help ever again, unheard. The city had tried to forget people like him, but they would never forget him again.